Friday, the 27th of March, the year of our Lord 2020, live from Capitol Hill. It's War Room Pandemic, our New York City special report on Talk Radio 77 WABC, America's most powerful radio station. We have Jack Maxey, Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam, the whole team here in the War Room. Jason Miller ran communication strategy for President Trump's campaign and the transition. He was comms director. Jack Maxey runs the engine room with Greg Manns of the War Room Pandemic. And Raheem Kassam, the Nigel Farage's right-hand man, has run the War Room for Brexit. All here today. We've got in the War Room every day, we talk about the pandemic, we deconstruct the economic crisis, and then we talk about the global financial crisis that the combination of that has driven. Also the geopolitics, particularly the Chinese Communist Party, their responsibility and their accountability for this global disaster. Today we were going to start with, in a few minutes, or the president, I said, did he already do it? The president of the United States signed the largest stimulus package. I would actually say, gentlemen, it's probably the largest relief package in the history of the nation. $2 trillion. This is after a $4 trillion bazooka fired by the Federal Reserve to support the credit markets. This bill is of $2 trillion, absolutely amazing in its size, its scale, and how quickly it's put together. We're going to talk in detail about that a little bit later, particularly how people in the tri-state area and how people in New York and New York City get the cash. This is supposed to be a bridge. It's supposed to be a bridge to the other side of getting rid of this virus, either shortening the arc, crashing the arc, pushing out the arc, all choices. But the biggest thing we've got today is the race against time with Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio in New York City, as now either the apex has decided, the analysis shows it's either going to be in mid-April, late April, mid-May. The state and the city cannot get together on that yet, but we're taking Governor Cuomo's numbers. On the numbers we have, very crude on the back of the envelope, Jack Maxey. How would this thing, if this thing was to peak and have its apex around April 21st or so, given the numbers we see today for New York City and their growth rate, still doubling every 4.7 days. Let's round up to 5. Where would we be on the 21st?
Well, let's say we're at 25,000 right now, and so that's day one. We double every 5 days just for simple math. That puts us up at 200,000 day 20. Now, I did a little bit of math there. Of all the patients in New York State, there are 1,583 that are in ICUs currently. So that's about a 3.5% rate for the number of infected that we have now. Should that stay?
That's what the rough numbers were always. 4%. I think even in Italy, 4 to 5. 15% are hospitalized. 4 to 5% have generally been in ICU units. So the 3.5 is roughly it.
Right. So if you took the 200,000 number from the potential, the theoretical infection rate for New York City in 21 days, then you would need about 7,500 ICU beds.
You're skipping a step here. We're doing a little live math, as we say. You have 30,000. You need 30,000 hospital beds. 200,000 infected at 15% is roughly what the hospital beds are. That's 30,000, correct? Right. Then it's 3.5% for the ICU units of what we're calculating right now at a New York State. That's roughly how many hospital beds at 3.5%?
7,500 for
ICU
a total
units.
of 200,000. Now you'd probably remove
and
them.
Casualty rate if it's a 1% of 2,000, right? That's
right.
That's roughly the math.
And if the 30,000 beds that they need, theoretically, I would imagine that includes the ICU beds. So it could potentially drop that number down a little
No,
bit.
it definitely includes. The 30,000 assumes that's total beds. That assumes the
Right.
ICU beds. The ICU beds is a subset of that. Is that with the stock that we have today? And here's what we got. The President of the United States is going to Norfolk, Virginia, town where I was born, Navy family, to see off the USS Comfort tomorrow.
Awesome.
He's going to see it underway. It's out of I think it was in dry dock, under repair. It's now ready to roll. It's still got a lot of stuff that was not, gotten up to speed from what I understand, but that's maintenance they'll do when they get back. Heading to New York. So we've got a 1,000-bed supplement from the USNS Comfort. We then have 2, I think, battalions. I don't think they're brigades. One from the 101st Airborne from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, that's coming up, a medical group.
Yes.
That can build a field hospital. We've got the Army Corps of Engineers already there to repurpose certain spaces. And we have from 3ID, from the 3rd Infantry Division, I think it is in Fort Hood, Texas, coming up, another battalion, I think, not a brigade, I think it's a battalion, to build other field hospitals. And Governor Cuomo today did his press conference from the new reformatted Javits Center.
Right. And so they have 1,000 there. I think that as of a few days ago, they had expanded the hospital beds in New York City to about 9,000. So we're probably looking at about 12,000 beds that they've got circled up right now.
And at least on these numbers at the APES, and this is a different number than de Blasio is putting out, and we're going to try to figure out how to get those over the weekend. We're going to be back, by the way, tomorrow from 10 a.m. to noon. We've got to if you look at the ventilators. Now, we don't know on the respiratory technicians because there's X amount of respiratory technicians or X amount of units per respiratory technicians. But with the inventory they have in stock, I think the rough math is the 7,500 ICU units, we should be covered for the apex at least, give or take, with ventilators, correct?
And also Dr. Birx made a really good point today in her press conference. She said, look, there are a lot of areas of New York State that really don't have any cases, but they do have technicians, they do have extra ventilators, and what she sort of proposed was this idea that, within the state—
Ride to the sound of the guns on this one.
Exactly right.
Okay. I want to go to Governor Cuomo. Raheem Kassam already proved value. This is the first 77 Talk Radio WABC event that Raheem's been. Raheem's on the injured reserve as he went through potential we thought was corona, but it turned out it wasn't. Let's go to Governor Cuomo's the first part that Raheem gave you.
And I want to make 2 points to you. And I want to make 2 promises to you. This is a different beast that we're dealing with. This is an invisible beast. It is an insidious beast. This is not going to be a short deployment. This is not going to be that you go out there for a few days, we work hard, and we go home. This is going to be weeks and weeks and weeks. This is going to be a long day. And it's going to be a hard day, and it's going to be an ugly day, and it's going to be a sad day.
Wow. Long day, hard day, sad day. Right? He's stepping up for it. I want to go. I know you don't have time now, but what were the 2? I saw the 2 points. What were the 2 promises? What were the 2 promises he made?
Well, he goes on to talk about just exactly what he's doing in terms of trying to get together, as we saw from the press conference this morning, trying to get together everything that he said. He's repeated again how many ventilators they're going to need, how many things they're putting out there in the field. And he goes on to talk about more rhetorical promise about, how much effort they're going to put into this and how they're going to be working there every day.
So help me out and help the New York City audience out, the New York tri-state area audience, Jason Miller, because last night on Hannity, the president— is the first time I've really seen not a riff, but a little bit of a throwdown. He was questioning the governors, why they're not doing more, the whole thing. I don't know if he actually said fake news, but on the ventilators. But then today, full throwdown on certain people they were trying to have with the volunteer program, particularly General Motors, Ford, et cetera. And then we did something historic. I think he set the executive order out for the Defense Production Act, which we have not done since the Korean War. And I know he was getting tremendous pressure from the Chamber of Commerce and other lobbyist groups not to do that. Oh, they're all volunteering. They're all going to help. Trump finally said enough of it. Bang. And after blowing up the chairman and CEO of General Motors, something changed overnight. The president's attitude last night was not the attitude this morning, and it seemed like a lot of it was about this. He understands the getting of the equipment, particularly the ventilators. He pulled the trigger.
Yeah, absolutely. And he did it in a very direct fashion on Twitter initially. I think it's the first Defense Production Act ever ordered by Twitter, which is kind of great. I mean, they technically went and did the letter afterwards.
Yeah, we had an EO afterwards. Just to clean it up.
He announced it on Twitter. But I want to let folks know that, look, Governor Cuomo has been saying that we're about 14 to 21 days away from the peak in the state of New York, which then means, again, a 14 to 21 day ramp up. Then you have the other 14 to 21 days on the backside. And so keep in mind, that doesn't say when it ends, that means on the backside. University of Washington, just within the last little bit here, has put out a study out on when the pandemic will peak. And they broke this down by state. Now, they said for that week of April 1 through 7, that New York, actually as well as Vermont, is also when there. Haven't heard a lot about Vermont, but as far as where they're trending to, that's on track. Washington State, which is on track based on this new study to have a total of 1,400 deaths in the state, would then peak between April 7th and 21st. And so this brand new study from University of Washington tracks up with what Cuomo is saying for that April 1 through 7 stretch being the key week for New York.
I want to get back into that bed capacity, ICU, nurse, doctor teams, all of it. We got to get into the details here, all of it. 77 Talk to ABC. This is War Room Pandemic, the New York City special report. Got the entire team here in the War Room. Raheem Hassan, Jack Maxey, Jason Miller, Stephen K. Bannon. We're going to return in just a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Talk Radio 77 WABC in New York City and the tri-state area, episode 80, War Room Pandemic, New York City special report. Let's go back to this University of Washington study. I want it because it dovetails with basically what the governor's been saying, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, this is in the Seattle Times, and it's focused more on Washington State, where, as my New York peeps should know, I'm originally from, lived in New York and in where I grew up in Seattle. Headline, University of Washington model says social distancing is starting to work, but still projects 1,400 coronavirus deaths in the state. That's in Washington State. But it has in here, when will the pandemic peak? And it has it chunked out April 1st through 7th, April 7th through 21, and then later on. And again, each state has their own dynamics, but specific to New York State, it has the peak happening in that April 1st to April 7th range, which again falls right exactly where Governor Cuomo has been saying, which is that 14 to 21 days. I do want to point out for folks, the only other state, and I haven't had a chance to go through all the exact details. This is hardcore academic, and they're going through this. The data, folks, all the projections. Vermont is also in that range, but where it really starts to pop is in this April 7th. And again, I don't want to seem like I'm discounting anything in New York, because I realize just the hell that the city is starting to go through. But I'm saying, as we step back and look at the nation overall, this April 7th through 21, you have about a dozen, maybe 15 states, everything from Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all the way through the Midwest, Texas, Louisiana, Arizona, Nevada, Washington State. We know that it's going to be bad in New York State from April 1 through 7. Nationally, April 7th through 21, it's going to get even worse.
But this is why it is not in the realm of possibilities that we're taking. You're not going to ease up on this thing. You're not going to ease up on the requirements. I don't think to date. Remember, let's go back to Washington. This is what I think is important for New York State. Then I'll talk to the country. Washington also hit. Jack, jump in here. Remember, what Inslee did was social distancing, essentially a voluntary, it was complete shutdown of Seattle. The businesses did it. Microsoft did it. Everybody did it. They shut the University of Washington. They closed the schools. This town was a ghost town. Everybody kind of sheltered in place, essentially, on a volunteer basis.
Yeah, anyway, so Seattle is in King County, and then immediately north, where I grew up, is Snohomish County. Immediately south, where Tacoma is Pierce County. He shut down those three counties. And that's basically, I would say, for overall, that's roughly 2/3, maybe 70% of the entire state.
And that's why they flattened the curve. And also, Jack, jump in here. They'd use the anti-malaria and the other drugs. They infused the system with these prophylactics and or therapeutics.
Well, and also it might be that the city of Seattle has a healthier population than a lot of these places that are getting crushed. I mean, I think I read statistics that Washington State, California, Colorado, and are pretty much healthier than the rest of us. So it could be that they just are starting out with a better, healthier population as well.
And Steve, I want to make sure that I'm not totally bearing the lead as we're talking about the potential impact for our folks in the tri-state area who are listening to this right now. But as we talk about nationally, based on this University of Washington study, what their current projection is more than 81,000 people in the United States could die from coronavirus by the 1st of July. And that is a pretty massive number. They also say that, again, this is nationally, not specific to New York State or New York City, that hospitalizations will generally peak in mid-April with 64,000 more patients than licensed beds nationwide.
And here's the thing. We'll work through the numbers this weekend. It's as Italy shows you, what happens is that the system starts to implode on itself, like in Italy. It's the doctor, nurse. You have the gating event of the ICU units. You have the gating event of the ventilators and the technicians. These are highly technical. The respiratory therapist is a central part of this, and they can work on many ventilators, right? But that's a part. And what you have, if you don't have the protective gear, the PPE, given the hours they're working. Remember, in Wuhan, we had doctors working 90 hours, doctors and nurses teams working at 90-hour stretches. Then they start to break. They start to get, careless, or things start to come through as they get tired. That's when you get another push into the mortality rate.
Yeah,
right?
you look at Spain for a really serious
Perfect
example of that. 15% of the people in Spain are healthcare workers who have contracted the disease.
I think it's 10% in Italy right now, close to 10% of Italy, and I think it was much higher. I think it was 15% in China. We'll double check that, but that gets to be look. 81,000. And here's the other thing. You can see that the storm is now coming ashore. New York City's essentially Wuhan, right? You got, unlike in China where they locked it down, Hubei province is the size of France, 80 million people. They locked it down and they quarantined, a hardcore quarantine in Wuhan to make sure that nobody came in and nobody came out, right? That was the big issue. Here you got two other mini Wuhans in back of New York City, and that would be New Orleans, and I think New Orleans is going to be worse than Katrina, and you've got Detroit in that Michigan area right now. You're seeing that from the governor. By the way, just as a note, I think we've got this somewhere. Governor Lamont has now requested, I think, the White House a couple of times to declare the state of Connecticut a federal disaster declaration. He has not gotten it yet. I don't know what the hang-up is there. We ought to check that out. But you can see that this is starting to build. That's what the race is, to get the beds, get the Army medical units up there, to get the Navy medical units up there. He's calling people out of retirement, et cetera. I just wish we had – the one thing I think would be helpful if we had if there was an agreement by the mayor's office and the governor's office to at least come up with a set of numbers that can have a range in it. But at least it's direction, because right now the mayor's math is different. It's a peak and an apex much later in April, all the way into May.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, let's go ahead and play Mayor de Blasio, who was on with Stephanopoulos for GMA this morning, essentially saying that things are going to get worse all the way into May. Again, this is off from what Governor Cuomo is saying.
In the mayor of New York right now, Bill de Blasio, joins us from City Hall this morning. Mayor, first of all, our condolences for that victim from the NYPD, the first victim, and all the casualties here in New York City. More than 23,000 cases here in New York City right now, 365 deaths. What more can you tell us about the situation right now?
George, look, here's the reality in New York City. People are answering the call, healthcare workers, first responders, but we have to be real honest about where this is going. I can tell you right now we have enough supplies to get through this week and next week in our hospitals. That's all I can guarantee you. And after that, unfortunately, we think this crisis is going to grow through April into May.
That's a difference right there. So we got to sort that difference out. Also, we're going to try to here at the War Room do what we can to help support New York City and the people in New York State. We're pretty well sourced as far as what people are working on throughout the country. We've already started to direct some masks and other things there and talk to other people that can expedite that. Okay, War Room Pandemic, the New York City special report. The entire team will be back. 77 WABC in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Talk Radio 77 WABC, War Room Pandemic, New York City's special report. Donald J. Trump, who's going to take the podium shortly, theoretically, at the White House in the Brady briefing room, says nothing is inevitable. He's a New York City guy. He's from Queens. Nothing is inevitable. Human action and human agency will get us through it. The cussedness, tenacity, and grit of not just the American people, but the people in this great city, the greatest city in America, and I would say the greatest city in the known world, New York City. And it's going to have a couple of tough weeks in front of us. Raheem, we got some breaking news from Channel 4.
Yes, we do. The FDNY is flooded with emergency calls, 170 calls as of this breaking news alert, currently on hold. The call volume described as the, quote, largest in our history over the past 3 days. FDNY strongly urging New Yorkers to call only if they are having a real emergency.
I think this is very important. Nothing to fear but fear itself. The greatest challenge you have is ill-informed complacency, but if you get the facts, you get the information, and I think your governor has done a fantastic job at these daily briefings, incredibly professional. You should be watching that. You should be on 77 WABC as they've turned all of their efforts in this massive apparatus onto making sure that New Yorkers and people in the tri-state area have all the information. Phil Murphy, too, in New Jersey. New Jersey, I just heard that there's a bunch of nursing homes potentially with infections in New Jersey. That thing's getting out of control over there. I want to go to Cuomo's. By the way, the University of Washington chart, we're going to have that up on the site. Hashtag War Room Pandemic is how you become part of the show. We want to hear your observations, your suggestions for other topics, guests, but particularly we want news. And if you're in the tri-state area, New York City area, hashtag War Room Pandemic. Make sure you're keeping us in the loop. Jack, the chart there for the University of Washington, that's going to be up on the site.
We'll get it up on the site and we'll take a screenshot and a clip for Twitter as well.
And when does New York come off when is the curve down? When are we off of this?
You're pretty much back to April 1 numbers according to their chart in mid-May.
Okay. Let's go to, do we have Cuomo? We have another poll from the press conference today. Very powerful.
Yep. Here's Governor Cuomo from earlier this morning.
People that this enemy attacks. Every time I've called out the National Guard, I've said the same thing to you. I promise you, I will not ask you to do anything that I will not do myself, and I'll never ask you to go anywhere that I won't go myself. And the same is true here. We're going to do this, and we're going to do this together. My second point is, you are living a moment in history. This is going to be one of those moments they're going to write about and they're going to talk about for generations. This is a moment that is going to change this nation. This is a moment that forges character, forges people, changes people, make them stronger, make them weaker, but this is a moment that will change character.
There are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. You are in the middle of living history in real time. They will, as we said since January when we started this show, they will talk about this from decades and decades and decades to come. Cuomo today also, I think, made a fairly compelling argument about how they're putting their shoulder to the wheel, but it is a race against time for the hospital beds, for the ICU units, for additional doctors, et cetera. I want to turn, and we'll clean up some stuff. I want to get Phil Murphy's quote later, but let's turn now to what people in New York, in the tri-state area, also need to know, and that is this economic package, this economic bridge. A little while ago, the President of the United States signed. It was very controversial. When we left the early show at noon, we do a 10 to noon show every day. We left the early show. It was up in the air whether it was going to happen today. There was some congressmen out there that saying, hey, we got to abide by the Constitution. We want a full vote. We want everybody's name up here, who voted for it, who didn't, right? And there was a big consternation. That got worked out. The president went hard, particularly on the congressman from Massey from Kentucky, a libertarian, one of the Rand Paul libertarians. He went hard on him. They figured it out. They passed it sometime this afternoon. I think the president signed it around 4:30. The largest, really, a relief package in the history of the country. $500 billion to support companies going forward to make sure there's no bankruptcies, hundreds of billions of dollars in lending and small business loans that are going to be available through the Treasury. I think a couple of $100 billion of direct cash payments, $300 billion of direct cash payments to people, infusion, and to help the delta on unemployment benefits. So it's $2 trillion. I would say a third of that roughly to the little guy, to the small entrepreneur, and to the direct to the citizens, and 2/3 to support really credits to keep companies going, to keep companies out of bankruptcy and keep them going. A lot of details coming out about it, and everybody's not happy, right? Some people felt they were trying to get too much of the social justice stuff in there. Obviously, Republicans, and particularly liberal government Republicans, are in shock of the fact that now you have, let's be honest, you can say, I'm not saying they're nationalizing the airline industries, but they are coming in with direct credits. They're coming in with direct backstops for loans. So it's pretty dramatic. You want to give your summary? You've done such a good job on this, Jason. Where are we on this? And how can the little guy, this is the key, this was made to bridge this drop in demand because of proclamation.
Yeah. And so the number one question, Steve, that everyone's going to be asking is, when am I going to get this check? When is this going to start coming in? So if you're someone who has filed your tax returns electronically, which is about 70 million out of the 150 million taxpayers that are out there, you are going to receive, they can process about 30 million of those a week. And so at the earliest, I would say about half of folks are going to receive it in 3 weeks. About the other half of folks will probably receive it in about 4 weeks. There might be a couple stragglers that go into a fifth week, but 3 and 4 weeks, again, if you've been filing your taxes electronically and they have you on file. Now, the big question then is, what about the other 80 million, the folks who typically do snail mail? Some of these will be businesses. Some of these will be the individual folks as we start figuring things out. That will be between, I don't see it being done in 3 weeks, probably in the 4 or 5 weeks at the earliest, maybe at the absolute latest. It gets stretched to somewhere in the 6 week range. But again, they're working on a number of different things. We're going to see some more announcements about how they're going to speed that up. I will tell you on this, that having spoken with Treasury directly, that the directive has been put down by Secretary Mnuchin. He wants this done in Trump time. He has told them, I don't care what.
Which is yesterday.
I don't care what you have to do. We're going to find these people. We're going to get them their checks. We're going to get it moving. And again, so that's the timing. What will people get? So couples earning up to $150,000 will receive $2,400 plus an additional $500 for each child. So individuals earning up to $75,000 will receive $1,200 plus an additional $500 per child. So these payments will phase out for those earning over $75,000 and then over $112,500 for head of household filers, and they'll phase out for married couples filing joint tax returns over $150,000. So I know you have a lot of folks in the tri-state region who earn $100,000 a year that are literally living paycheck to paycheck because it's so dang expensive. So they're also, as far as the unemployment benefits, they're retroactive back to January 27th. So you have a lot of folks, and it includes folks in the gig economy. This is a massive change.
This is a massive change.
This is massive change. The economy is all different now. It goes back to January 27th. So it essentially has about 2 months in retroactive. There are a lot of people hurting, wondering what the heck is going on. I work at a restaurant, work at a bar, do something in construction. I have my own small company. I'm a small service sector type person. I have my own individual business. Steve's yoga studio, though. Steve, have you ever done yoga?
The answer is no.
Okay. I've driven by a yoga studio. I haven't actually gone into one. I'm definitely not flexible for one of those. But as we talk about the proverbial small business owner,
right,
these types of folks who've been laid off or been basically lost their business, there will be that 2 months to go back to. There are another 2 months. And again, here is the big key. This is not a permanent safety net. This is a safety net to get us through the bridge. This is to go and get through this tough stretch that we're at right now and get us to the other side. That's what this is all about.
If you consider what they call the first package was directly dealing with this kind of Manhattan Project on therapeutics and the vaccine, which was the original $8 billion package they came out with, which was part one. Part two was to gap and make sure we had leave and paid leave and everything like that. That was $110 billion. This is part three, which is $2 trillion. They're already talking about
$2.3 trillion.
$2.3 trillion. And I think that Raheem, you told me when you first came in, there was discussions already over in the Capitol. They've got Nancy Pelosi on a hot mic or something talking to Clyburn, that they're already starting the wheels rolling for the potential fourth, because I understand this may not bridge the entire gap. There's also $100 billion in here for hospitals. There's $150 billion for state and local governments. I think a lot of that is to go to make up this gap between unemployment insurance, unemployment benefits.
And one of the important things, and Steve, I should have included this into my little mini rant. Here is the important thing for small businesses, which really is the economy here. There are loans available through the SBA, Small Business Administration. And by the way, these things are not super complicated. I actually spoke with the general counsel for a small business. I think they have like 100 or 200 employees. So anything under 500 who applied for one today. And what they do is you go and apply, and then they kick back to you. Here is your lender that you'll go through. So it'll be They'll
send you to a commercial bank, something like that, because they're going to have them execute.
Yeah, so it's what's called a non-bank lender that they then kick you to. The general counsel actually got back to me and said, because I kind of directed him in the right place to go, and he goes, you know what? It was a lot less brain damage than I thought it would be. They turned it around right away and said, here's the one lender who you match up with.
Great to know.
So here's the important thing. They put loans out to people to essentially help them carry their payroll for 2 months. So this is key. And if they keep all of their employees, or if they rehire them, if they've just recently let them go, then they don't have to pay that back. So the incentive there is for a company to say, we can keep you afloat for 2 months here, so you don't have to go and lay everybody off, because companies are going to want to keep their employees, hoping that they'll be able to start back up in 2 months rather than start everything over.
This is unprecedented, and if the company does that, then the person also gets the cash payment, the direct cash payment. So that's
correct.
That's the twofer. Jack, we have gone through, and I want to get you in here because I understand 77 WABC is the most powerful radio station in the nation, also the most renowned of the conservative talk radios. The heritage here, and Rush Limbaugh, and the whole, for years and decades, the number of personalities that have been on this channel, it's legendary. We've had $2.3 trillion in a relief bill, not even a stimulus, because that drop in aggregate demand is tremendous. We've had unprecedented $4 trillion infused in different aspects of the system. I think already the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve is up over $5.6 trillion. People got to remember, President Trump took $1 trillion off the balance sheet of the Fed in the first 2 years of his administration. So this is a massive cash infusion. How are limited government Republicans out there, the traditional base of the Republican Party, the traditional base of really the kind of the base? We had the populists and nationalists like myself, but you had limited government conservatives from the crews, and the people have been there forever. How do you guys think about this?
I think it's obscene. I think everybody who voted for this today was a coward on a voice vote. They should have been counted. We still have a constitution. For the moment, I don't know that we'll have it for long. We may, if you run out of toilet paper, people.
So you just think
I think we live in this nation of courage and tough people. You know, we don't back down from anything. And I think we have just gone into a state of terror, and throwing money at something that God created seems a little silly. It's kind of like the global warming people who think $4 trillion can make the sun stop working.
But here's the good news. Hold on.
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
Good news, I'm no longer the War Room co-host that Jerry Nadler hates most right now. Like, I got bumped down to number 2. Like, you really got to work hard.
I don't even know if Nadler can process this.
I'm not against the fact that we're helping people. I'm not against that.
Yes, you are.
No. I'm against the approach. I'm against the approach. You know how you always say, not in the room, not in the deal?
Yep.
If I wanted to throw $2 trillion at the market to support it, I'm not going to do it to create volatility so guys can just trade it back and forth, which they've been doing all week. Some hedge funders are making millions.
Okay, so you don't have a problem with the $2.3 trillion of the.
I just would have spent it differently.
No. I'm saying we have two different payments. We have $2.3 trillion that deals with the drop in aggregate demand that everybody went home by proclamation. Essentially, by proclamation, Seattle was shut down. New York was shut down. All these cities were shut down. That drop in aggregate demand was by proclamation of the government. The little shop owner and the hardworking individual had nothing to do with that. All they did was kind of follow, hey, for the community effort, what these guys say they do it, I'm going to do it. So the $4 trillion that went by the Fed is different. Do you not, as a limited government Republican, agree with the $2.3 trillion that went to bridge? Do you disagree with the bridging event?
I can handle the bridging event because, backing up Wall Street and the crybabies with the French cuffs is pretty much what we do as a country now every 10 years. But what bothers me is that it's the deplorable, once again, who's getting shafted. The little guy is losing his job. He's staying at home. He's not able to go out.
You don't think the $2.3
Look, the
trillion
deplorables are all hands on deck. New York's flying around the country. The congressman won't even get to the bridge, and a week ago they claimed they were captains. Now, if we want to say leadership, I like what Cuomo had to say today. That's a guy I'd follow into battle.
As someone with French cuffs, I agree.
Okay, this is War and Pandemic, New York City Special Edition. It was his proclamation that dropped aggregate demand. We're going to be back on 77 Talk Radio, WABC in a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Steve Bannon.
Talk Radio, 77 WABC, War Room Pandemic, New York City Special Report. Got the entire group here at Fort Defiance, hard by the Supreme Court of the United States in the nation's capital, where today was passed the largest stimulus bill in the history of the nation, $2.3 trillion. President Trump has signed it. He's about to go on stage here at the Brady Room for his press conference. Jason, what do you think he highlights today? Clearly, other history. He basically signed and put in the Defense Production Act, which means he can tell any company in the country, you're going to build this. Here's what your margin is. He's done it to General Motors, which I think in Kokomo, Indiana, they're announcing they're going to stand up a plant to start building ventilators for places like New York and others. Don't know when those can be delivered, but now you got the United States, you got major industry turning to on this, and for a couple weeks they try to have guys volunteer and cut deals. Now he's just saying, bang, you're going to do this, bang, you're going to do that.
Well, and as the president literally is just taking the podium right now in the Brady briefing room, I hope that what he does is get up there and say, I get it, I heard you. Everyone in Washington heard you. We know that by nothing of your own doing, folks in America are hurting right now. You've been laid off. Your business has been destroyed. Everything has been put on hold as we fight this virus. We got help to you. Help is on the way.
We got some other stuff from around the world I want to get to quickly, Raheem, because I want to end by talking about this. The county by county, this quadrant thing they're talking about, and what Governor Cuomo, I think, is going to end up doing over the weekend.
And the president beginning his press conference momentarily as well. The biggest daily rise in UK coronavirus deaths. We've seen overnight 181 people died in the last 24 hours. Boris Johnson, the country's prime minister, testing positive. Matthew Hancock, the UK's health secretary, testing positive. The chief medical officer now self-quarantining as well. Italy recording its highest daily rise in deaths and not reaching its peak yet, according to the experts there, and France extending their lockdown period by a fortnight, by 2 further weeks.
Some breaking news right now. Florida, the Governor DeSantis is going to have people at the border of Florida. Anybody traveling there from Louisiana is going to be checked. Their car is going to be checked, fever checked, and they're going to put them in 14 days of lockdown.
This is, okay, in 14 days of lockdown?
14 days of self-quarantine,
state.
but
Okay.
there are going to be penalties if you don't follow the rules.
This is why Governor Cuomo, to me, has got to show additional leadership. I believe, having done this now since mid-January and seen all these cases throughout the world, that the governor will step up with a shelter in place, at least for New York City, for a couple of weeks to get us through here. Some sort of voluntary shelter in place along the lines of Seattle, Washington. And I think that will lead the president off of this county by county, or the quadrant, whatever they're doing, because this is huge news. DeSantis, look, I'm from Richmond, Virginia, right? I know the thing about people talking about a divided country. We're a united country. We can't have states now individually going and saying, hey, I'm shutting down my state.
Steve, has there been a time since the Civil War where there's been a state-to-state, some kind of, unless there was something like a fugitive on the run or
Yes,
something
there
like
has.
that?
The 1918 pandemic.
They shut down the states?
Different states took different paths, all the way down to the county level. In fact,
tomorrow we're going to get into that. I want to get into that.
Look, he's got to do it, or the rest of the states are going to do it for him, right? We've already got Texas, Arkansas, Rhode Island, and Florida saying, hey, if you come here from New York, you're going to be in 14-day quarantine.
I think this is, for the president, it's the opposite opening up. DeSantis is one of his acolytes. I mean, DeSantis is not the governor of Florida if it's not for Donald Trump thrown in there. I mean, that was a tough fight, right? He barely won. It was amazing that he actually did win, given all the headwinds he had against him in 18. But, I mean, DeSantis is part of the inner circle. For him to say, hey, we're closing, and this also shows what we've been saying, New Orleans is the next Wuhan, right? You can see it's starting. The storm clouds are brewing there. Okay, we're going to be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. This is War Room Pandemic, New York City special report. We'll be back on with the regular show tomorrow, but heavy emphasis in New York City. You're the center of this gathering storm. And the way to get all the information is to come to War Room Pandemic. Hashtag War Room Pandemic. Also go to our website, warroom.pandemic.org, 24/7. We don't at 10 a.m.